And welcome back to the Survive Scale Soar Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, and today we have a success talk, and it's going to be an awesome episode. I have as guest Joe Evangelisti. I could do a whole podcast on just introducing this guy. He's got best-selling books like Multiplicity, The Legacy Wealth Blueprint. He's the CEO of Legacy Developers. He's a coach. He was a builder at U.S. Navy Seabees. He has the Storage Syndicate. He's a husband. He's a father, just an all-around great guy. And really excited about what he's going to bring to the show. Joe, welcome.
Appreciate it, Jeremy. Thanks for having me, bro.
Joe, give me a little backstory of who you are and how you came to this place where you're doing all these amazing things in business and in life.
Yeah, when you ask me that, the first thing that comes to my mind is like Andy Frisella used to have this saying. He used to say that overnight success takes 1,035 days or something, or 3,650 days, right? It took him like 10 years to be successful. So yeah, all that success stuff you're talking about took me 15 years to figure out, but we're finally starting to break through into different directions. And I really started out as a son of a construction guy, drywall contractor. My dad was the first entrepreneur in our family, and so like construction has always been in my blood. I grew up on construction sites. I just loved it when I was a kid, like watching, something turn into something nicer or something, more beautiful, creation, that whole concept. And so, I got lucky right out of high school. I went into the military and I was able to be a builder in the U.S. Navy Seabees for about 6 years. And those are the construction battalions in the Navy. A lot of people don't even know they exist. But we got to build and do cool shit all around the world and in all different cool locations. And soon after that, started flipping houses and, fast forward today, we're building self-storage facilities all over the world, all over the country.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, I really appreciate you saying that, because when we talk about success, there's that flash in the fry pan, right? Where somebody's like successful overnight, and that's just really doesn't happen. Oftentimes they burn out. They are that flash in the fry pan, and it's that success. It's that doing things over time, being consistent, having that fortitude, not giving up and pushing through. That's the true success. And those are the things that are going to last a long time. So you're currently doing the Storage Syndicate, and you're working on developing these different sites across the country. What made you jump from residential investment to going into that commercial side?
Yeah, I think a lot of people have different journeys, but for us, it was kind of burnout. We're flipping about almost 100 houses a year. The last year, we decided to take stock of where we were. And remember, Brian and I, my business partner, sat there and talked about it. And we were like, man, we did 88 houses this year. How many you want to do next year? You want to do 120? You want to do 110? And he was like, bro, I don't ever want to do 88 again. And I was like, thank God you said it, because this was the most miserable year of my life. Like, the problem with the business is it's really, really hard to scale. I'm not saying it's impossible. There's people out there that are doing it, but they're doing it with massive, massive teams. And, we had about 45 employees at the time, and it was just so transactional, man. It was money in, money out, money every single week. It was like chasing our tail for closings, and, closings are getting pushed, and the buyers are having a hard time getting a mortgage commitment, and they want a home inspection, all these things that, we would do the work as a flipper to put a really nice product on the market, and then it would still, get beat up over the course of the next couple of months, with inspections and everything else. And so our margins kept getting smaller and smaller, but the transactions had to keep going. It was like this conveyor belt of houses we had to keep buying in order to keep everything moving. And I was like, you know what? I got to find something that's more scalable, that's more functional, that's more effective and efficient, that I can build with a really great culture. We had a really not so great culture back then, because we were just hiring people to fill seats, and our leadership wasn't really the way it was. And I take responsibility for that. Fast. And, now I look at it and I'm like, you know what? I love what we're building. I'm doing about 10 times the revenue, 10 times the profit. And I have about a quarter of the size team that I had back then. So, we made the shift ultimately to get more scalable and efficiency, and, it worked out.
So tell me about that. And I imagine some of that comes from the military and I heard you talk about this in a recent conversation with a circle that we're also involved with, is I really tuned in to you having, placing a lot of importance on team.
Oh, yeah.
And tell me a little bit about that and why team is important, the right people in your world.
Yeah, it's not just important. I think it's everything. There's few things you can do out there without great people on your side. When we started Legacy, part of the reason was, and the reason we called it Legacy was I really wanted to build true legacy wealth for people on our team, our investors, ourselves. I wanted to build over time. And, when you're doing transactional house flipping, it's like I'm borrowing 100 grand from you, Jeremy. I'll give you 10%. I'll send it back to you in 6 months. And then hopefully you'll give it back to me again. And again, it was transactional. There's no long-term, wealth. Legacy and the idea behind storage and large commercial investments is that there's enough to go around. I can create equity for my team. I can put equity into my investors. I can have equity left over for myself. And we're building long-term wealth over time. It's not just a flip and transact market. And we're doing some of that still. We're still wholesaling and titling properties, but for the most part, our goal is to build 100 self-storage facilities over the next 10 years, and they all need to be Class A. So 80 to 100,000 plus square foot, net rentable. These are real sites. These are $20 million plus sites. So, that allows me to, create opportunity. Almost every executive on my team has equity. Almost every person on my team either has equity or some sort of bonus at performance as we close, as we stabilize, as we turn over projects. So we're all motivated in the right direction to build legacy wealth together.
Yeah, so in coaching, you have programming that leads to your thinking, and thinking leads to feeling, and feeling that leads to action that leads to results. And going to that feeling part of the wheel, you're making an investment into your team. You're providing them opportunities. How does that make them feel? Then, based on that, what type of action are they taking?
They're juiced in, right? We have two guys that are about to cross $1 million in net worth from their equity in our deals that have been with us for 18 months, 2 years. So they always say like money is the root of all evil. Money is just a tool. Money does not make you a worse person. In fact, it probably amplifies the kind of person you really are to begin with. But what it does is it allows you to do things. It allows you to do things for your family. It allows you to be, to take more vacations. It allows you to give back and contribution in much different ways, which is really what we're all here for, right? Growth and contribution and next level. When you have money, you can do that. And so, obviously our team feels like they're part of something because they are, and they are getting paid, appropriately for helping us, launch this thing to help us scale it.
Yeah, I love that. I appreciate you bring that up about money too being a tool. It flows in and it flows out, and it gives you more options. And I had a mentor that, that was what she shared with me, is it gives you more options to do more things. And her big thing was giving. And, the level she was able to give at, it was just something that I'd always admired and what I've instilled in my business and being able to do. And you can't do it unless you have the tool. So I love that you address that. It's not an evil thing. It's just a tool and how you use it. And it does amplify, right?
100%.
Awesome. So you've got a great team, and you're building this opportunity, and you're helping, you're investing. What are some of the core values that you think you have within your team that maybe other organizations that are looking to do the same thing should have?
Yeah, my favorite core value is actually, we have this rule called the 70% rule. At 70%, it's a go, right? Like, I want to train a team of problem solvers. And in fact, we say great leaders create great leaders, right? Like, you can't be a leader if you're not solving problems, right? You can't lead people if you're not showing them how to solve problems and showing them how to lead. So the 70% rule basically says if you're 70% sure, it's a go, right? There's no questions, there's no thoughts, there's no second guessing. You don't have to take it to your manager. You don't have to figure it out, because what I want my folks doing is learning as they go. And I want them micro failing along the way so that they can continue to get better. Most organizations, what happens, that the guy at the top has got his thumb on everybody, and he's trying to micromanage all their decisions. And before you make a decision about a $20 purchase, make sure you run it by me, and I'll let you know if there's an $18, way to do it somewhere. I don't want that, right? I want my people being autonomous. I want them understanding that problem solving is growth. When we solve problems, we get to the next level. And it's not about me getting to the next level. It's about all of us growing together and getting to the next level. So that's probably one of my favorite core values, is just solve the problem, right? The problem's in front of you, seek it out, go out there and solve it. Let's level up. Let's do more.
Yeah, we live in a world with a bunch of complainers when we should be out there problem solving. And when we do that, great things start happening, not just in our business, but in our life as well. So I love that core value. So you're working on some projects currently, but before we get into that, I just want to ask you, what is your biggest challenge that you're facing right now as a business owner?
People. people. I'm always looking for great people. Right now we're trying to fill 3 different executive spots, and I'm constantly on the move trying to find people that are going to help us, grow and get to the next level. So, it's not that I would say it's a problem because they're out there. It's just, that's my biggest puzzle to solve right now.
Awesome. If somebody's listening to this today and maybe they're getting started out in their business, and like you said, it took you 10 years to get to a place where you start seeing the successes stack up, what would you do to inspire them or encourage them just to keep going and pushing forward?
It's the only way we grow, man. You got to put one foot in front of the other. My old mentor used to say, the art is in the start, right? Just put one foot in front of the other. And I think that's what, with the syndicate mastermind and the way that the tools are built inside of that, it's all just putting one step in front of the other. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of, processes out there that get really, really complicated, or people overthink it. And then what do? They freeze, right? Because they're fearful that they're not going to be capable of creating the outcome. I would rather do micro steps. And before you know it, you look back and you're like, damn, I just walked a mile. I think just starting is the most important piece of it. You'll wake up, 15 years later, building big ass sites.
Yeah, I always ask my coaching clients every week, and it drives them nuts, but there's a purpose to it, is what were your wins this last week? And they're thinking, okay, I'm looking for the big thing, right? And every once in a while, there is something really big that pops up that happens for them. I'm looking for the small wins, the stackable wins. And I tell my people, you can be anywhere you want to be in a period of 5 years. And when you get there, I know you're going to have a feeling of, how did I get there? And just look back at all the small wins that you had over time and that you just kept pushing forward through it.
I'd say, Jeremy, like, I don't know. I imagine you're kind of close to I'm 42, right? I'm in that place right now where I feel like, holy shit, if I don't enjoy the journey, I'm going to be old, and I think that's part of the problem is so many folks, they don't realize that now is the journey. Now is the time to be happy. Now, if you're not happy now, you're not going to be happy with money. You're not going to be happy with success. You're not going to be happy when that plastic trophy is sitting on your bookshelf. You got to figure out a way to enjoy this shit. And if you don't enjoy it along the way, you're just going to waste your life. You got to figure out how to make that switch, make that move, stop letting fear hold you back. Do your thing, because, man, life goes fast.
So saying that, like, what is mindset's everything, right? When we start, we look at mindset. What do you do to work on your mindset every day?
Well, a lot of things: journal, meditation, asking myself bigger questions. I'm constantly trying to figure out, as a visionary, I think our job is to make sure that not only do you have the right people on the bus, but they're in the right seats. Like Jim Rohn said, you got to think about their unique ability. What drives them? What are they passionate about? What are they interested about? And you got to kind of like open those doors up for them and say, hey, by the way, this isn't working. This might work. And so that's, a high level problem solving to me is like, how do I put the chess pieces in the right place on the board to give me the best chance to win?
Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So I want to get into what you're doing right now. And what is a passion project that you're working on that you might be seeking some help or maybe some investors? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, my biggest passion is been for a long time is veterans affairs and veterans issues and needs. I was a vet. I served. I certainly didn't. I came back with all my limbs. I came back mostly mentally sound. And unfortunately, I think it's a massive issue that our country faces. People don't realize that we're sending these guys and girls out there to war, and they come back and they're disfigured and they have it's the rest of their life that they're living with these things. And they just don't get enough attention. They don't get enough care. They don't get enough, money. They don't get enough action. They don't get enough anything. So that's one of my biggest drives right now is raising money and putting it in the right places for the right veterans charities to get it. That and I've been big lately on Operation Underground Railroad. There's a massive, it's always kids and vets with me, right? It's like I think if you can help somebody along the way who is deserving, or like kids that, they haven't even started, so giving them a leg up before they have a chance to go down the wrong road, I think is huge. And, Operation Underground Railroad, if you haven't looked into it, it's crazy, the statistics that are out there and what's really going on, behind the scenes.
Yeah. And it's huge. And it's a conversation that's not being had enough. And so I commend you for doing that. I saw the other day, I think you were working actually on a project for a housing project for vets. Was that what I saw?
Yeah, we're doing a veterans housing project, and this is the crazy part about our supply chain issues right now in the world of commercial construction. We got a 47 unit apartment building completely done. I mean, broom swept, furniture in place, and everything. And we have 47 families, many of which were homeless or are homeless, that we're expecting to move in the last 2 months. And they're living in shelters with whole families, and we're missing a metering part, a meter, like the metering, electrical metering part that makes the thing actionable. And it's like on a 15-month back order. So, I'm putting the APB out to everyone I know in the electrical industry. I mean, it's an Eaton part, EATON, which is a very popular, common, but I mean, I'm literally messaging people off of LinkedIn that are like executives at Eaton to try to figure this thing out.
That's amazing. It's so devastating what's happening with our economy and the supply chain, and hopefully that changes here very soon with some new leadership. And we talked about leadership. We need some leadership in our country.
Sure.
So thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Tell me a little bit about your storage syndicate. I know I get some questions on that, and would like to be able to maybe point some people to you that have an interest in the storage syndicate.
Yeah, it's I think the term mastermind kind of gets overused a lot of times because what's the real definition of that? When we talk about the syndicate, I really think of it like an old school syndicate. Back in 50, 100 years ago in the mafia, they used to, like, all the families would come together, right? And like they were all competitive in a way, but at the same time they knew that they could grow a lot more together, right? So they'd all meet up, and then you get the concrete contract, and you get the trash contract, and you get the high-rise contract or whatever, and they would share their ability to grow together. Well, that's what a syndicate is. And our syndicate is really designers, developers, accredited investors, people with very little real estate knowledge that are out there trying to learn to find deals for these folks, and they can get a piece of the action for bringing the deal. It's amazing, again, what you can do when you're building a $20-25 million facility. A person at Bird Dog in a deal getting 3, 4, 5% equity in that deal is life-changing. So if you put in the work, it doesn't matter if you have experience or not. If you're able to put in the work, there's a way for you to get involved. The storage industry in itself is, in my mind, the strongest commercial sector right now for the next 10 years. During COVID, retail took e-com's crushing retail, big box, all that type of thing. Offices are starting to become like, whether or not we need them or not, is everyone going to work from home? Are they going to come in? So office space took a hit. Apartments are amazing as an investment, but they're super hard to get into. They're super competitive. Everyone seems to be there. Storage, for me, I think, is the next 10 years of commercial real estate in the United States.
So somebody's listening on this call, and they're an accredited investor, and they have an interest in maybe getting involved with you on some of these projects. I know you've got projects going on all over the country. How do they get in touch with you?
They can actually go to investwithlegacy.com, investwithlegacy.com. They could shoot me an email, joe@investwithlegacy. But, as long as they're accredited and they're interested, happy to talk through, whatever questions they might have, and, see if we can help them out. And not everybody's a great fit, by the way. It might not be the best asset class for you, but I'm happy to talk about it.
Awesome. Well, Joe, I appreciate you coming onto the show today. Some amazing stuff that you shared that I know somebody just takes an ounce of this and applies it to their business, to their life. They can see change, an immense amount of change in their life. And I appreciate having you on the show today.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Until the next episode, onward and upward.